Hi everybody, I'm Matt Harry. I'm a screenwriter, and editor, filmmaker. I've published 4 novels. 2 I've done traditionally, 2 I've done on my own through Kickstarter, so I can talk about kind of both those processes, what it's like working with a traditional publisher, editor, and marketing, and then kind of doing stuff on your own.
And we got Jessica as well.
Hi everyone, my name's Jessica Mason. I am a screenwriter, I write short fiction, I do novels, I have a trilogy, Plastic Girl. I also write and publish comics and graphic novels, and I've been in comic anthologies, and so I'm here to support this presentation and answer any questions if I can. It's nice to see you all.
By the way, I gotta say, I love how you have put your novels out. You do the same.
Yeah,
just to.
I forgot to do it at WonderCon. Everyone was like, oh, did you actually write stuff?
Yeah.
So
well, and it's good to see it as we talk about it.
Yeah. So the big thing that I want to talk to you guys all about today is everybody comes up to me, at these panels and talks with me, after seeing that I've done it, and they have an idea for a book. And usually it's usually like, I've had this idea for years, I've wanted to make it, what do I do? Will you do this? Like, they don't know where to, people don't know where to start, but they have the passion and drive to do it. So what I want to do is show you guys a presentation today, how I went through my process of doing this and making all the books that I've made, hopefully to empower and show you guys how to do it on your own, and to know that you have a lot more agency and power to do anything you want these days without relying on anyone else. The power today is all in your hands. Don't worry about too much of the other stuff. Don't try to lift too much before going into it. Just make a book. That's, if I can encourage you to do anything, just make the book you want. As my power slowly goes here, I'm Andrew Racho. We've been through this part. I've made a bunch of books. During the pandemic, I made, I guess I'm on my 18th fake kids parody book. So I've done a lot in the past 3 years. The best advice I can give to all of you guys is to just do it. Figure it out along the way. And you don't have to be good or perfect. I'll speak from my experience. I started out making comics, and I'd say that in the process I enjoyed them, but looking back, my first book, or even my first book in this kids parody series, was all right compared to what I was able to make later on. So if you don't put all your stock and weight into the first thing you do and just let it be a thing you do for fun, for enjoyment, the pressure's off and you can actually get the thing done. And I don't know if you guys want to speak to any of your experiences as well in publishing at least your first ones.
Well, my first one was the opposite of that because I had an idea for a screenplay for Sorcery for Beginners, which I pitched to my agent at the time at UTA, and he told me, well, no one's going to buy that because it's an original idea, no one's buying original ideas. He's like, if this was based on a book, that would be great, but you don't want to write a book, you want to write a screenplay. And so I drove home, I was all upset, and I was like, well, I'll just write a book then. And I hadn't written a book since I was in 7th grade, and it was a very different process than writing screenplays, I found. So that was in 2012, I had that meeting. I finished the book in 2016, so it took me 4 years, 7, 8 drafts of writing the book. It's about kids who find a help guide to magic, and so I realized halfway through writing it should look like a help guide, so I had to reformat it. But then in 2016, I very quickly found a publisher. People really responded to the idea, and I had multiple offers of kind of representation from agents, which was really cool. But the writing process for me was really, I like really sweated it, and wanted to make sure it was really, I went over it and over it, and it took a long time because it was so many words. But then since then, I have gotten faster, and I'm now at the place where I've now written about 8 or 9 novels. I have several coming up, and now I can do it in like 6 months. I can write kind of a full-length novel, and that's pretty good, and then get that off to an editor and stuff. I don't know what your experience was, Jess.
I'm kind of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. As far as my novels go, I spent a lot of time working on them. The first one, because I was a screenwriter first as well, I wanted to go back and write a novel, and I did kind of explore Wattpad, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And I started doing a chapter at a time just to have some kind of accountability, and quickly realized that my genre was not the genre that does good on Wattpad, but I did discover Hulu was doing a Handmaid's Tale short story contest. And I did a bunch of those, and I found a cool community there, and realized I really liked writing short stories, which I have been doing and getting published. So I sometimes do Andrew's method, where I'm like, you need to just do it and get into it, and then if I have an idea that I'm a little more precious about, I do Matt's method, which is long and
I don't recommend that method.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I think Andrew's right. You should write as quickly as possible.
You want to get that first draft done.
Yeah.
Because what I do think happens a lot is you get your idea and you're in love with it, it's special, and you have to just realize everyone's first draft is garbage. You know, you just have to write it and don't think about it forever. So that's when you got to just go. And then, yes, take the time in the second and third draft to be a little more precious.
Yeah.
That's kind of
well, here's what I'll say to you guys. Since we've all written for screen, would you guys nowadays want to produce the first script you've ever written?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I don't even want people to look at it. I actually have a file on my computer that says to my wife, if I die, do not open this.
Oh my God.
And it's like those early screenplays and things.
Yeah.
I can't bear to delete them because like they meant something to me.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't want my kids to look at that. They'll totally change their opinion of who I am.
Now, strangely enough, I wouldn't want to produce the version of it.
Yeah.
But I just was pitching it to
Right.
him,
Yeah,
and I actually was like, I want to go back and rewrite that. So I would like to go back to my first screenplay and rewrite it now as an older, more experienced writer, and because I still like the idea. Yeah. So.
And I think what's interesting is to not sit there and hate yourself or judge yourself as you're doing it. Just do the thing because it's fun. If you go in with that attitude, who cares what you make? Who cares who reads it? Who cares if you sell it? The important thing is you just have fun doing and learning. And just know that you're not limited by anything with writing, whether it's your novel, whether it's your screenplay or whatever. All you need is a computer to type, a pen and some paper to write. And even if you're doing illustrations, you just need TextPad to write the thing you want. And you have access to anything that you possibly want to make nowadays. So one thing I think is important to think about, what's your motivating reason for wanting to do all these things? So I've written a bunch of books. The backstories to some of mine were, I had a comic series I was doing for a number of years, and my goal was one comic a week. And after 5 years, I had close to 300 plus comics, and I made a collection of the best ones for one of them. Another one was a collection of just ideas that I would write down on my notepad. And then I would just have hundreds of these funny little phrases and sayings that I just come up with. And then eventually I just culled it down into my new book, which is 150 pages of just funny one-liners. I have a new anime style manga that I'm making. In my mind, this was a project that I'd said, I have to make this. There is, I just have to make it. There's no other answer than that. It's going to be done. And then these kids' books I actually hilariously made out of spite. Here's the backstory behind this. So my buddy posted, I want to make a kid's book back at the beginning of the pandemic. So I spent an hour laying out exactly how to do it and the things I'm going to show you today. He deleted the post, and as a you son of a response to that, I made the kids' book exactly with the methods that I showed him. Although I'm a horrible human being, so I made parody versions for adults. And after that, I enjoyed it so much, I made 17 more. So I showed him the book, he laughed. But really, that is the thing. I just was the one who followed through in that. We were both at the same starting point. I just followed through. And so anyone can do this. So I think some good reasons are, it sounds fun. It's your creative outlet. You want to express yourself. You have to make that good idea. You need to tell the story. It's in your bones. Maybe you want to make a book for someone. Like a lot of people want to make a kid's book for like their kids or nieces, nephews, other family members. And some people want to explore this as a career. And I think that's important to know that this is an exploration while you're doing it. It's not once you're done you get satisfied. It's a constant journey, and the exploration is the good part. If you guys want to talk about anything like about that in terms of reasons why you made your books, in terms of just what drives you to do it.
Oh, well, for my prose, I've been a writer since I was in 7th grade. So I have to write stories. I've always enjoyed stories. I like reading them, I like watching them, I like seeing them. But for certain books, I'm very driven by very personal reasons. And so for Plastic Girl, I was doing a different fantasy middle grade novel, and I am a climate advocate. I work in green spaces. I do a lot of youth work as well with young people. And I have 2 daughters, and I am obsessed with the climate crisis, as I'm sure all of you are, because you can't escape it. And I wrote a short story for my daughters about, you know, a young girl who found a species on an island, like at the end of the times after we've done everything wrong. Because as a parent, I was like, if we do everything wrong, can we still be reborn? Can it still, the humanity would go on? And so I wrote them a short story trying to see where I could find hope in all of it. And in my version, at the end of the world, there's only a few kids alive, and this young girl finds a species that's alive that shouldn't be alive, and it seems like it was born out of our garbage, right? And I was very driven by, I'm not gonna pitch the whole thing, but this young girl starts to rebuild our planet, and it's like, why is this working? Is it magic? Is she crazy? Is it science? And I got obsessed with this idea, and it was just supposed to be a short story, then it was a novella, then it was another book, then it was a second book, then it was a trilogy, and so it kind of got out of hand. And so some ideas are very, for me, come from I have to write it. And with Plastic Girl, I wanted nobody's opinions. So this one is all through me. I wanted to write it exactly. I mean, I have editors and things like that and artists involved, but I wanted to write the exact story I wanted to write. And I wanted to write it in the form of like more classic YA sci-fi, not the current kind. And so yeah, so this was passion, like what Adam did. This was gonna happen, and it took over. And then when I do like a story like Mary Shelley's School for Monsters, it is still passion, but this is a much more business-oriented one where I have a plan, you know, and there's other artists involved, other people involved, and so there's different processes. So I went on a little bit longer than I meant to on that one, but yeah.
I mean, I agree with the passion thing. You have to care about it. You have to be the first fan of your own work. Because if you find yourself getting bored while you're writing, which I find, you know, it's like I'm working on a scene, like this is not, I'm like nodding off, I'm checking Twitter. It's like, then something's not right with that scene. Something, I need to make it interesting. If it's interesting to me, it'll be interesting to somebody else. For me though, the thing, I get a lot of like what if questions inspire like my stuff. So like Sorcery for Beginners was like, I was eating lunch one day, I was reading one of those books about like Einstein for dummies. And I was like, man, if this book can make me understand Einstein, what if there was like a topic that like didn't exist that it could make you understand? And I was like, what's something that doesn't exist? Magic. Oh my God, magic for dummies. And then, of course, through the process, like you can't call the book Magic for Dummies. No one's going to want to buy it. So that's where I came up with Sorcery for Beginners. This one was like, I love superhero stories, but they never talk about like, when does Peter Parker have to go to the bathroom? Why don't they talk about that? What happens if Batman gets hungry? Like, where does he keep snacks in like the utility pack? This one was, I love choose your own adventure books, but I was like, what if there was a different kind of choose your own adventure book? What's the thing that we all choose in our lives? And that's careers. So I was like, oh my God, a choose your own adventure book series about careers. What career do I know the best? Filmmaking. So that's the one I started with. So for me, that's a lot of, but they come from that passionate place of like, I have a question of like, why doesn't this thing exist? Why I need to put it out there so it can exist. And then I get this thing of like, I gotta put it out there now because someone else is gonna have this question before I do. So, but it comes from that same place for sure.
And you can hear how we're talking about it, and our drive for this is having some sort of interest in this intrinsically that motivates us past it. We're all gonna have a ton of ideas, but the ones that tend to stick in our head that just almost become borderline obsessive, but we become passionate about, that's the stuff we want to follow through on, and it's the stuff that we get excited with, engage with. It's not going to be a beautiful process the entire time through, but that's, if you can have that spark and keep it, it will drive you through the whole thing. And I think hearing the things that motivate us, this excites us. The things that I think can sort of, you know, the reasons they're good is because there's play, learning, exploration, accomplishment, love, expression, enjoyment. I think there's a lot of misguided reasons, and I don't want you guys to follow down these paths, not to get negative here, but the usual bad ones are, I want to get famous, I want to make a ton of money, and I need this book to change my life / be happy. Some version of that. Fame, it's unlikely. Like Matt was saying, you're going to be your first fan, and there's a possibility with the things that you make, you may be the only fan, and that is okay. It is 100% fine. That is, don't even worry about that. You made the thing. You have that accomplishment that you felt. Who cares if other people like some of your things? And also, I've had my moments of fame. I've had my billboards on, so who cares? You know, they're gone the next day. So it's cool for the moment, but you can't let that sort of adrenaline high be the reason you do this. Because otherwise, it's a drug at a certain point. I want to make a ton of money. Who here has made 7 figures writing a book? Realistically, what we do is we do have our business stuff, but most artists will diversify their income, and it's not the one thing that makes them usually a lot of money. It's a lot crazier than that. It's not fast, it's not easy to sell, it's not about being discovered, and it's easy to get discouraged if all you think about is, man, I'm gonna make a ton of money. You make the book, you sell 3 copies to your friends and nobody else, and then you're just like, I should never do this again. You miss the point. It's not about making money. And if you need this book to change your life and be happy, that's not gonna happen. Once you finish the product, it doesn't suddenly change things. Jim Carrey has this famous quote about, he says he wishes everybody could see themselves become the most successful versions of themselves, because then they would realize how it would never make them happy. And the thing is, you have to be happy living, being yourself, enjoying the process, and doing and learning to be happy with what you have and having that gratitude, because finishing the product won't do it. Going through the process will be your joy. And so I don't want you guys to do your books for these reasons. I want you to do them for these. They will drive you further. So how did I do it? Let's put the spotlight on me for a second. Me. No. I'm gonna walk you guys through how I made my, this is not a kid's book, kids' books, because my story of spite turned into a lot of hilarity and a lot of interesting stories. So for me, it started with an idea. And like Matt was saying, you had the what if. Jessica had the passion idea. That's like, what's the thing that sparks in our brain? And I think what happens is we all get these ideas. You have to catch them when they float by. Now we all have like phone apps and notes and even back in the day, I don't know if you guys still do the pad and paper in your back pocket or anything.
I do it on my phone now.
Yeah.
So I take out my phone, use the notes app, and jump the stuff down.
Yeah, and you can categorize it if you need to. But sometimes you just want to catch the ideas, because sometimes that idea that you think of, you look back later and you're like, wow, this was really funny. I got to do something. Or, oh, this is interesting. And then it sticks with you. Or even like I was saying with my other book, where it was just a bunch of 100 musings, like I could look back and have those, but if I didn't catch them, they'd be gone forever. Another way you can do it is just free write ideas. Just sit down and just and see what pops up, and maybe one of them's something, maybe it's not, doesn't matter. Eventually you'll catch a good idea. For me, my best ideas come from observing and documenting life. If I see someone who's interesting, or meet, have someone come to my life who does something or says something interesting, that could be a whole story, that could be a whole thing. It might be nothing, but I try to catch those moments and write them down. Sometimes, when I'm in the shower, doing walks, groceries, middle of the night, when I'm not thinking about anything, that's when just having the openness and the reduction of anxiety of having to do a thing just suddenly allows me to be free and think. And you'll hear a lot of writers talk about like where your best ideas come from. Like, where do your guys' best ideas come from? Because mine's the shower.
The shower's good for thinking of ideas. Sometimes I'll just have, again, it's a lot of that, like just thinking what if scenarios are a big thing. News is like a big thing. Like you see something on the news and you're like, oh my God, that's a real thing. Like what if you took that to a different greater level? What about you, Jess?
Well, as far as like ideas, and for this one, originally it was the plastic patch in the Pacific Ocean that got me thinking about this, as I read an article about that. And so if I do, a lot of my short stories are speculative science fiction and that kind of thing. So the news, for sure, science articles, weird science. I'm very inspired by folklore, because I do a lot of monsters, mythology, things like that, just to get things going. I do agree with spacing out, but I also encourage, because sometimes I know for writers, that's not, for someone who ideas don't come to you easily, but you really want to write, I suggest, like, say you want to write horror, go and look up horror magazines that accept submissions and read some of their writers, get inspired by what you're reading, and then maybe write a short story for that magazine. You know what I mean? If you're having a hard time coming up with ideas or addressing, because sometimes ideas don't just pop into your head. So sometimes when I'm having writer's block, I will, like I joined a Substack. I don't know if anyone, have you guys heard of Substack? Anyone? I write on Substack, and you know, I have a little horror writing community there, and I get inspired by their little writing prompts and things like that. So, like, ideas from a lot of places. But when I'm struggling with ideas, I do those kind of things just to have direction, because sometimes you need direction to put them.
Yeah, and you know, you guys mentioned the key operative word in all this is inspiration. I always think in when it comes to the creativity, there's inspiration and there's perspiration. The thing that, you know, the idea that sparks it all, and then getting down to the work afterwards. So in the inspiration, the world's open to you, but in the perspiration, you're making it real. So these are all the ways that you can do it. Like the sitting down free writing has many ideas and picking the gems, or like you were saying, just write something and then suddenly that opens up space. Dreams are a good one for me every once in a while, because mine are pretty vivid. I've written entire screenplays in my dreams before. Sometimes improvising storytelling works. You know, what if you just look at this and I need to come up with a story for an auxiliary chord that you know, has a lonely day and it has a bad day at school, and then, you know, whatever. It doesn't have to be a good story. Suddenly just playing and remembering what it's like to play with your toys as a kid, that brings about some ideas. The what if, as Matt was saying, huge thing. And look, not everything that you do is going to be used, and that's okay. You know, there's that old adage of that writers would say that they write 10,000 ideas and one of them would be the next major thing. It doesn't need to be like that in your real life. You don't need to write 10,000 ideas.
That ratio would be depressing.
Yes. What you just have to do is do the thing, you know. Then the next part is the perspiration. You want to take it past an idea and give it space to be part of you. Allow yourself to think about it for a while. Give yourself room. Yeah, what if I'm thinking about this? And then there's this thing I can add to it, and this thing I can add to it, and oh, I could do this here. And then at a certain point, when you have all these ideas, you've just written them down, they're scattered about in notes and pages, wherever, and you put them into some place, you can start to give it structure. And that's what I would do with my books. So for me, when I was doing my parody of these kids' books, my structure was this, that I would have a book, and I would do the pages. This, I think I can show with family-friendly stuff being here. I would have an opening page, and then I would turn to the next 2 pages, and I would do the next 2 pages, and the script would be written exactly like that. Now, towards the middle of the book, at some point, I would throw in 2 parody pages that would be the joke, that would undermine everything I've written before. So I gave myself that structure to write in, and almost like in a poetic kind of way. But that was my structure for it. Now for screenplays and for novels and everything else, it's going to be a little bit of a different structure. But you know, this was my way of doing it, and so you know, you are going to have to, whatever you want to do will follow some structure that works for you. And now you aren't required to reinvent the wheel when you're writing a book. You know, you can if you want. You can subvert storytelling, or you could just make something like the thing you like. I remember watching this EDM producer who was talking about how he came up with songs, and and the most brilliant thing he said was, I just put somebody else's track in the top if I don't know what I'm doing, and I've already broken it down. Build, pre-chorus, drop, chorus, drop, and he's like, and I just follow that structure, and I just play around. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make the greatest thing. You just have to make it. And when you want to dive into it, I think one of the biggest things that helps is give yourself a reasonable deadline with plenty of wiggle room. So rather than say, I need to make this book this month, a year. I'm gonna make a book in a year, and that gives yourself the room in your brain to say, hey, I'm gonna have a finished product by the end. My buddy Lars, who's been tabling with me, I told him that we're gonna do this con earlier this year, and by having that deadline, Tuesday he finished the cover art and printed it that day, But he showed up here because he had that deadline. Whereas I've been talking to other friends about their ideas, and they're just years upon years of, yeah, I really want to get around to it. So having that deadline, I think it helps to say, this is going to at least get done. If you guys want to talk to your ideas of deadlines and your own sort of self-discipline in it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always say is if you're a writer, you are the CEO, sole employee, HR of your own company. You're doing it all. And so you have to find a way to motivate yourself to get stuff done on time. So I do a lot of like deadlines that I set in my head of like, okay, by Thanksgiving break, I want to have this amount of chapters done, or by the Christmas break, I want to have this thing done, or you say to a friend, hey, like I just sent Jess the latest draft of the 3rd book in this series, and I kind of teased it up beforehand. I was like, would you want to read this book? And she very kindly said yes. And so now it's like in my head, I have to finish the book to send it to Jess, even though Jess probably doesn't care whether I send it to her or not. But the fact that you said that out loud to somebody makes it real. And so even things like that, like I was in a writing group, I've been in several writing groups, that's really helpful. Like I gotta get in pages. I gotta take in pages this week. It's my week. People wanna read it. So even that little thing can really help you finish the stuff. And then that trains you to kind of train yourself to do it.
Yes. Deadlines are very important. One thing that I will say is if you can, every day, say, I'm gonna write, you can either say so many words, or I'm going to write for so many hours. And you can start small if you're getting new to it, and just make yourself do that every day, or at least 5 days out of the week, like it's a job, or pick the amount of work you're gonna do each day. And then what you will find if you do that, because writing is a craft, it's not just an inspiration moment all the time. You need to do it every day, and you will get faster, and you will get better, and you will suddenly be at 40,000 words, and you'll be like, how to get to 40,000 words? How to, because when I first tried to write a novel, I wrote screenplays, so it's not the same amount of words, right? So novels are a little daunting. And so it was first a short story, then it was a novella, then it was a little mini novel, and now the 3rd book of this is twice the size, because you just get better and better at writing, and better at writing quickly. So, you hear someone like Stephen King writes like 10,000 words a day. He didn't start writing 10,000 words a day. He started writing 500 words a day probably.
And he has editors.
And he has ghostwriters, I'm sure, and tons of editors. So yeah, I think it's important to have a daily practice along with the deadlines, which I do think are very important. A daily practice and a promise to yourself that that's my time. I'm going to do that, no matter how bad it is. Write a bad 400 words, you'll be all right.
Yeah, and if anybody here is like worked out or done gym or anything like that, that if you spend 20 minutes on a walk every day, suddenly you're going to feel more energized. If you spend an hour in the gym working on these specific things and you do that daily, 6 months later you're having abs, so
6 month abs.
All right, well, I'm gonna get abs in 6 months and prove it to you now. Deadlines, they work. So I think also what helps too, along with this, is visualize the thing that you want to pick up and hold. So whether you're holding, let's say, a magazine, a book, a novel, having that idea of the thing you want to hold in your hand helps out so much. So for me, what helped for me was defining the size of the print. I knew I wanted to do something like a kid's book, so I didn't want like a little tiny thing or what I could save the most on printing. I wanted something big and large that like kid hands could hold and the pictures would be big. So for me, defining the print size early on helped me for doing this style of it. And if you end up making your own stuff and you have to print your own stuff and all that, this changes a lot of the game. If you're writing a novel story, or anything that's going to be printed in just text format, it's probably less important. But if you're doing stuff with illustrations, this is a really good thing. But I think just even visualizing it really does help. So for my stories, I was art-based on mine. So I had to storyboard my stuff. Do you guys know what storyboards are? Anyone doesn't? Raise your hand. Oh, you guys all, of course, we're at the con. Everyone knows the whole process, that animation and books and all that stuff. You guys are awesome. I had to storyboard mine. Now, it helps me to get the ideas out, and they don't have to be good. These boards don't have to be perfect. They just have to get the ideas across. I'll show you how imperfect they have to be. This is one of my storyboards for a book called Hide and Seek. Now, what I did was I would give the illustrator that eventually hired my pages. So I knew it was square. I knew that's how I wanted it to look, where the text wanted to be, what the image should roughly be, and then any notes that I thought were important. This sucks. Let's face it, this is not good. However, I would do these little things, and then you could see the artist put like all these, did all these great drawings. I gave a list of what I kind of wanted the characters to look like and notes, and by the final rendition, you could see how it comes out, and it looks professional compared to whatever I did on the left there. And there's another version, like I put my buddy Alex in one of the pictures, and I went from, something, he was hiding in a linen closet, and now he's like popped out. And some things changed, but it's pretty much the a much better version of what I did. And now when I did that, I wrote all my lines, I had the storyboards, I had a game plan. For me, at this point, it was to figure out whether I would hire an artist or do the artwork myself. Now, we're all writers. I'm not a good artist, but I can muster up something if I need to. But we have skills in one area that may not translate to another. So maybe you are an artist, maybe collaborating with a writer or asking writers if they have scripts and you want to draw to them, or whatever your thing is. You don't have to do all of it, but you are responsible if you want to see it get done. But I think you don't have to do all the artwork yourself. And by the way, what books do you have that are very art-based that you've...
So for me, I agree with the visualization.
Yeah.
Because when I decided I wanted to do comics, I came to my first Comic-Con, I went to San Diego, and I just went to all the indie comics. I just just touched everything, read everything, checked it all out. And I was ultimately got into this anthology. Cthulhu is hard to spell, I have to shorten it. And I love the way this book looks. I thought it was very beautiful. I wanted then I knew that I wanted my company to make a graphic novel that felt like this. I wanted to do a hardcover. I wanted to be a certain look, a certain way. And so that visualization helped me do that. But for the process, he's right. You don't have to do it all yourself. I have many drawings that look like yours. Yeah. And because I sent a version of this to the graphic designer. I'm sure she had a good laugh for the artist and then made it pretty. But for Mary Shelley School for Monsters, this is a whole different thing because I work with Anna Wyszczek. She's an artist in Poland, and I was in an anthology with her, and I liked her art. And I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, let's do some concept art and some character design." So that's a process that I paid her to do, but we talked about the characters, we talked about the world, and she did art and sent it to me that I paid her to do. And once we got the look and we got what we wanted to do, we then went into the script part and we started. First we did a short in this anthology together, and then we go back and forth. So I'll write her a script. I'll say how many panels I want, what I want on the panels, how I'd like it to be laid out, where the lettering is going to go, and then she will draw and do it mostly the way I say, but she makes changes as well, which is really, we trust each other, so that's great. So you go from just words on a page to this beautiful art, and it is a wonderful process to work with another creative who is also a visual storyteller, and so you're giving her this weird world, or him, this world, these characters that you love, and then they're bringing their talent to it, and it's super exciting, and it's very if anything, if all I ever did was make this, I would be so happy, you know what I mean? And just the fact that people are buying it and reading it is even more extraordinary. But yeah, that process is just a constant collaboration because we go back and forth all the time. And then once you get through the art, then you have to get a letterer, which you all probably know. And I have a wonderful letterer, and he has his own studio, and he brings his talent to it. And if anyone knows, if you get a bad letterer in your book, you just ruined your art and your whole process. Because the minute you put bad bubbles and bad looking letters on your thing, it looks unprofessional, people don't want to read it. And then he did the design and the cover design and everything like that. And it's just great to go through that process. And it is, as a writer and a publisher, it is expensive. Yeah. So, you do need to most of the time you do need to pay the people, but like there are some people who want to collaborate, you know, not very many, but.
Yeah, I think it is important to know too, like when you, to not go in hoping to find a collaborator specifically because you want to save money or not spend money, because you know, when you're so passionate about something, you can't guarantee that the other person's passion will meet yours.
Yes.
And that can be a stopping point for a lot of people. I need someone to collaborate with. You don't. Work extra shifts, take a side job, save enough money, and then hire someone. One thing I wanted to touch on with you though, which is interesting, we both have done the graphic novel kind of thing. Yeah. And you know, I'm talking about for my books doing the storyboards, but for you, I'm sure that there's like specific pages where you're like, I kind of need this, and other ones you're just like, nope. Do you think?
Exactly. So like if I feel very strongly about how I want a page to look, I will draw it. I will draw the panels out and send it. I will. There's a car in this. You know, I'm a Supernatural fan. They have the car.
Yeah.
The car is almost a character. So I had a specific car that I wanted it to like this car to be, and so I'll send you know, reference photos.
Yeah.
I'll send like the panels kind of drawn out the way, or I'll send a sample if I feel passionate about it. A lot of the times with Anna, I like what she does, so mostly I will write the script out and just use my words, you know, and to be very specific. And then I use film language a lot just because it's similar, like medium shot, like all that stuff. But yeah, I don't draw that much, but I do send a lot of reference pics, and you know, we get each other, so it's nice. So most of the time it works out. But yeah, there is a lot of communication, and I do think paying an artist is very important, because no matter how passionate they are about it, it is your idea, and they need to make a living, and the art, it takes a lot to write, but it takes a lot of physical work with their hands and time to get that artwork going. So yeah, they, as much as they might want to love your idea and want to collaborate, they can't afford to just do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the other thing too, like I did worked with a bunch of illustrators for this book because I wanted to illustrate. There's 100 endings in it. I wanted to illustrate a bunch of the endings, like the old Choose Your Adventure books. When you're paying somebody, it automatically becomes a more professional relationship. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be that much. It's just like, I'm giving you money now. We're treating this as like not favors.
Yeah.
And so you can they have expectations from you and you have expectations from them. And I think it just makes everything feel much more above board.
Yeah. And I'll walk you guys through how like I kind of went through the process of hiring the illustrators and all this stuff, and where it kind of brought value, especially in my book, since it's just like very straightforward of like text illustration, very basic in that form. Is that you guys remember my drawing skills? They're not that good. Hiring artists for me was really easy because in my process with of making a book out of spite for my friend, I told him to use Fiverr because he was still very much at the beginning process. And the thing is, it's disturbingly easy to use it. While most artists will very much scoff at it, at the same point, if you're starting out and you're just trying to figure things out, there's tons of artists on there that you can hire. It's basically, you go in the site, you look at people's work. If you like it, you ask them if they'll do the book for, you know, your work for you. Ask them what you want, and they'll say yes or no or whatever. And then you basically say, I want, you know, for me it was like 32 drawings. Here's my, here are all my storyboards and all this. Would you like to do this? And they'd all say yes for the most part. There are other places you can find people, Upwork, Instagram, you know, anywhere else that you meet an artist at a convention. You can always ask people. They don't have to say yes or no. You guys can always go back and forth and email and stuff, but Fiverr is honestly one of the easiest ways to do it. One thing you want to know, just off the bat, like cover yourself. Make sure you have the commercial rights on Fiverr, or when you hire someone, do it as a work for hire, because it's a silly little legal thing, but you just want to make sure that like, if you make it, that somebody's not going to be like, oh, well, that's my book because I never gave you these right. Don't worry. Just most artists will know to do something as a work for hire. So just make sure that that term is clearly in there. Now it's going to cost some money. You got to save up a little. It's about finding a good match, not going for the cheapest option. We're going to talk about that in a second. And don't use AI to generate the art. only enhance it in small ways, because quite frankly, people are making AI art. It's ultimately data polluting the entire industry. Nobody really likes it that much. So do your creation. It's not about coming up with a thing and writing some prompts and hoping that ends up being good. Make the story that you want to tell. That's the important thing. So like a good collab for me was my book, My Weekend with Grandma. You can see my trash drawing to the left. And the artist and I worked together in a process where they would give me the roughs, they would give me a clean line, so they would just do a rough sketch. I'd give them some notes. They'd draw the clean, dark lines and all that stuff with all my notes incorporated, so you could see we had a little more wide space towards the clean line version. And then they colored it. And so this artist allowed me one revision per stage. So I had to be crystal clear on my notes to make sure I didn't overload them and to get what I want. And I got an amazing image, and I worked with someone really great. A bad collab is something like this. This was a book called The First Day of School. Now, I drew this thing of a little brother. He's leaning over and comforting his brother on his first day of school. Now, over on the right, I don't know what's going on with that hat, first of all. It's like he's wearing an upside-down pumpkin with like a brim that doesn't make sense. I don't know why he's making his little brother smell his armpit. The art styles don't work, and the house has Corinthian columns, but like no walkway, or like what's going on? Who also, in the middle of a hug, which that kind of looks like, holds their arm out like this. At first glance, it looks fine, but there's a difference. There's another version of Yikes. I had a thing of a school lunch scene here. Now, if you look at the image on the right, the little brother and the boy are not the main image. There's this girl in the center. There's no room for text. All these other notes that I gave were not really incorporated, so I had to spend a ton of time giving notes. Like, there was a weird hat. There were full turkey legs in the lunch. The character's not the main focus. Nobody's eyeballs are the same. The main boy's missing teeth. I need some room for the text. And let's talk about what the girl in the center is eating. You guys just shout out loud what you think she's eating.
Peaches.
Tacos.
One of you guys got it. Are those hard shell tacos that she's eating with a fork? And quite frankly, I think the answer needed to be yes. So I said, hey, let's go make hard shell tacos with a fork. So I got the image cleaned up after like a billion revisions. Took a while. And I got this, which was her eating a hard shell taco with a fork. But let's quite frankly go deeper into this. There is sour cream on the right side of the taco with ketchup, liquidy guacamole, and is that grape jelly? What is going on with this taco? Yikes. So it's about finding the artist that you like, and take some time to find someone. Again, give yourself that space and that deadline. I got some great work with the person on the left, this cool watercolor art that was great in the center, this really cool Pixar style. I found like a bunch of artists that I ended up making great books with. And remember, it's a collaboration. You're asking for a clear vision of the thing that you want to do, but you got to be open to their interpretation and their style. They're going to add to what you do, so you don't want to be so hyper-specific. Give them room to do their thing. If you hire a good artist, they'll do good work. But you don't have to make everything the exact thing you need it to be. Let them have a little, their room. But if it's important, give them the notes onto it. And those notes that are usually important are about the storytelling. Be accountable. You may be limited to one revision, so make sure your direction's clear. If you ask for changes, you have to be willing to pay over on your end. There's a lot of people who will be like, well, I paid for this, and that was a cool bump. Don't. Remember, there's somebody else on the other side. How would you feel in your shoes if you were given the notes the way that you gave them? So, be kind and remember you're working with someone. And give support and praise when it's due, because quite frankly, if something's good, let them know, because they'll give you more of that. You want to give constructive criticism. You want to be clear, aim your artist in a direction, and don't just point out flaws. You're there to support them and not grade their work. It's about aiming the work towards a larger vision and not criticizing people. You want to empower them. Bad notes would be like, I don't like, change it, make it not look terrible. Good notes would be, I think the girl in the center is eating a hard shell taco. Either way, let's embrace this. Let's add taco fillings. Also keep the focus on the boys, centering them up. I've done a mock-up to show you. You can see how in those notes I've held myself accountable to get the work done as clearly as possible, to go from this to this, which is a clearer story. So, you know, where are we? Now, we've talked about lettering briefly. I'm going to barrel through this last part here just because I know we're running low on time here. The lettering is the last part where you want to put the letters on the text, at least for me. So if you have a novel that you're writing, there's, you know, there may be an illustration between some words or whatever, but if you're doing a book like this, I needed to put letters where people are saying the things on the book here. So an example would be up here, where I found a way to letter it. Now for me, I just busted open Photoshop and did it. That was pretty easy for me. You can hire an artist to do this, or ask the same artist who did it to do that, but likely you can separate that, or realistically just learn GIMP or Photoshop and do it yourself. If you get stuck at any phase, hire someone and don't you know, muscle through it, or hire someone to do it to fill in the gaps. You're eventually just going to have to get it ready for print. Kindle, PDF, whatever you do. You can ask if they'll finish it, or you can hire a graphic designer to finish it. And give yourself time to do this. While this feels like you've already got your illustrations and your story done, this is going to take time just figuring out little technical things like that. So it's going to be frustrating, but trust that you can do it, and, you know, be okay screaming expletives every once in a while. Now there's the printing process of it, the thing that you ultimately want to hold. There are a lot of printers on there on the internet who will print things for you. I used Mixam as mine, which was easy. I just uploaded the file to their site and they sent it back. They would do individuals, or they could do large orders. There's tons of print shops that you can talk with online, everywhere else. Be prepared that wherever you print, you're gonna have to make some adjustments for bleed room and size, blah, 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 blah. That's always just gonna happen. So be patient with yourself, and it's not gonna be an overnight, immediate thing. If you wanna print it the easy way, you're gonna just use Amazon Publishing. You're gonna go to kdp.amazon.com, or just remember Kindle Direct Publishing. It's gonna take some time, it's gonna be confusing at first. Their site is not as user-friendly as you'd like. You can upload it for the site, digital download, paperback, hardcover, and then you can order your own author copies at the minimum price, which could be like 10 bucks, 15 bucks. Some of mine are like 3 bucks, but at least in that way, you can say that you've just made a book. With it, the steps again, where you started with the idea, you gave it some structure, collaborated, lettered, published, one step at a time. You took this journey from something that you wanted to do, but by taking enough, you know, steps in a row, allowing yourself the patience, giving yourself that time to hold up your book and say that you've just made a book. And that's everything. Also, follow me and support me, guys. Instagram, I'm trying to get Raya, so if you guys wouldn't mind following me on Instagram, that would be great. We've got 1 minute to wrap this up. Jessica, Matt, do you guys have anything you want to say while we're closing out here?
We're actually at the 2 tables right next to each other down in Artist Alley, F54 and 56, I think.
Yes.
So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to stop by the table. We'll bring yourself 5.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Oh, no, just thanks for coming. And yeah, stop by the booths if you have any other questions. I'm at Wicked Tree Press on Instagram or Facebook if you guys want to give it a follow. And thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being here, for taking the steps in your journey to start making that book you've always wanted to. And I wish all of you luck. Please do the thing.
I have a bunch of bookmarks up here. If you guys want to grab them for free, it has all the Instagram and Twitter stuff on there as well.